I'll never forget the first time I saw Bam Bigelow. He was a force of nature, a human wrecking ball with a flaming tattoo on his bald head. From the moment he stepped into the ring, he demanded your attention. So when I heard of his passing, it was like a punch to the gut. How could someone so full of life be gone so soon? If you were watching wrestling in the late 80s or 90s, you couldn't miss him. He was nearly 400 pounds, yet moved with the agility of someone half his size. But it wasn't just his size or the flames etched across his scalp that made him stand out. Bam was one of the most gifted and agile big men in wrestling history. WWE writer Ryan Murphy described him as the most natural, agile big man ever, and Bret Hart even said he might have been the best big man to ever step in the ring. Bam's career spanned across the top promotions: WWF, WCW, ECW, and New Japan Pro Wrestling. Along the way, he captured major titles, including the ECW World Heavyweight Championship, and even headlined iconic events like WrestleMania 1 and Survivor Series 1987. Bam wasn't just a wrestler, he was a living legend. But like so many in the industry, his story wasn't all about fame and glory. Behind the scenes, he faced personal struggles that left a mark on both his life and his career. Bam Bigelow was a standout, a big guy who could execute moves that most wrestlers of his size wouldn't dream of attempting. He could fly off the top rope, do cartwheels, and mix it up with anyone in the ring. Fans loved him for his distinct style and his larger-than-life persona. Still, being a wrestler, especially with the intense high-risk style Bam was known for, took its toll on his body. His career, though unforgettable, was full of physical challenges. Bam Bigelow was known for delivering jaw-dropping moments that left crowds in awe, but those high-impact performances came at a steep cost. Over the years, he suffered numerous injuries, and the pain became a constant presence in his life. To cope, he turned to painkillers. At first, it may have seemed like a temporary solution, just something to get him through the day and keep him performing. But opioids like OxyContin are dangerously addictive, and what began as pain management soon spiraled into full-blown addiction, a battle he fought for years. Addiction is a relentless struggle, affecting both the mind and body. For Bam, the toll was devastating. His health steadily declined, and he developed atherosclerosis, a condition that hardens the arteries and restricts blood flow. He also had diabetes and a persistent infection that refused to heal. Combined with his drug use, these health issues created a perfect storm. In 2007, Bam passed away from a drug overdose. He was only 45 years old, far too young for someone with his talent and charisma to be gone. What makes his story even more tragic is how common it is in the wrestling world. Wrestlers face immense pressure to perform, often pushing through injuries because the show must go on. It's a mindset ingrained in the industry, one that desperately needs to change. Beyond his struggles with addiction, there's another side of Bam's story that isn't discussed as much: his legal troubles. Though details remain unclear, he had multiple arrests throughout his life. One of the most significant incidents involved a 6-month stint in a Mexico City jail. The full story behind it remains a mystery, but it hints at a troubled past, one that may have contributed to the battles he faced later in life. His career wasn't without controversy either. One of the biggest shocks came in 1997 when he abruptly left ECW while holding the World Heavyweight Championship. Fans adored him, so his sudden departure felt like a betrayal. With little explanation given, many felt he had turned his back on the company that had given him a major platform. His exit also created tension behind the scenes, particularly with ECW owner Paul Heyman and other wrestlers. The controversy followed him for years and influenced how some fans and peers remembered him. Another aspect of his career worth noting is how he was presented during his early WWF run. His Beast from the East persona made him stand out, but it also played into racial stereotypes that were common in wrestling at the time. With his flame tattoos and nickname, some saw elements of his character as leaning into Asian stereotypes. While not as overtly offensive as some other gimmicks from that era, it's clear in hindsight that certain aspects of his persona might be viewed as problematic today. What we don't know is how Bam himself felt about all of this. Was it just part of the job to him? Did he have any reservations? Those answers may never be known. But what is certain is that he was a consummate professional, respected by his peers and adored by fans for his incredible dedication to the business. Looking back at Bam Bam Bigelow's life, it's clear he was more than just a wrestler. He was a trailblazer, a performer who redefined what big men could do in the ring. But he was also a man who faced overwhelming challenges. His story is one of both triumph and tragedy, a legacy that continues to resonate. Bam Bam's story stays with you long after you hear it. For us fans, his journey is a powerful reminder of the sacrifices wrestlers make to entertain us. Night after night, these men and women put their bodies on the line, often paying a much higher price than we realize. Bam Bam's battles with addiction, his health struggles, and his untimely death are all part of that harsh reality. But his story is also a call to action, a chance for the wrestling industry to take a hard look at how it treats its performers. Better healthcare, more support, and a stronger focus on mental health could make a world of difference. Wrestlers shouldn't have to choose between their health and their careers. If you're a big fan of Bam Bam like me, stick around, because now we're diving into a nostalgic look at his epic career. Scott Charles Bigelow, better known as Bam Bam Bigelow, was born on September 1st, 1961, in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Even as a kid, he stood out. In high school, he was a star athlete, excelling in both football and wrestling. He even placed third in the New Jersey State Wrestling Tournament as a sophomore. Pretty impressive, right? But life wasn't always smooth sailing for him. He didn't finish school and took on some wild jobs, working as a bouncer, a bodyguard, and even a bounty hunter. Yeah, you heard that right, a bounty hunter. He had some crazy stories, like getting shot in the back while chasing a fugitive in Mexico. He even spent 6 months in a Mexican jail. After all that, Bam Bam decided to give professional wrestling a shot. In 1985, he began training at the legendary Monster Factory, one of the most well-known wrestling schools. It didn't take long for people to realize he was something special. That same year, he made his debut, doing things in the ring no one had ever seen a 400-pounder do. Cartwheels, high-flying moves, and sheer athleticism that defied expectations. By 1987, Bam Bam had reached the WWF, the ultimate dream at the time. His debut was a big deal. They ran a storyline called The Battle for Bam Bam, where all the top managers in the company fought over signing him. Bobby Heenan, Jimmy Hart, Mr. Fuji, they all wanted him. In the end, Bam Bam chose Oliver Humperdinck as his manager and quickly became a fan favorite. That same year, he made a huge impact at the very first Survivor Series. He was on Hulk Hogan's team, facing off against legends like Andre the Giant. Even though his team lost, Bam Bam was the last man standing on his side, a huge accomplishment for a newcomer. But he didn't just stick to the WWF. Bam Bam wrestled all over the world. In Japan, he teamed up with another powerhouse, Big Van Vader, and together they dominated the scene, even winning the prestigious IWGP Tag Team Championship. SportsCenter highlighted just how talented Bam Bam Bigelow was. What made him unique was his rare combination of size, speed, and athleticism. He could perform high-flying moves off the top rope, brawl with the best, and even outpace smaller opponents in the ring. Bret Hart, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, once said that Bam Bam was possibly the best working big man in the business. That's a huge compliment coming from someone like Bret. But Bam Bam's career wasn't always smooth sailing. Wrestling takes a toll on your body, mind, and relationships. He battled injuries, backstage politics, and often didn't get the recognition he deserved. In 1995, he left WWF after some behind-the-scenes conflicts with other wrestlers. Still, he kept pushing forward. In ECW, he had some of his most memorable matches. Hardcore wrestling was at its wildest back then, and Bam Bam fit right in. One of his most iconic moments came in a match with Taz, where they crashed through the ring during a suplex, a moment that cemented his status as a hardcore legend. After WCW was bought by WWF in 2001, Bam Bam didn't immediately join the new roster. Instead, he remained under contract with Time Warner, which kept him from wrestling much. There was buzz about him potentially joining TNA in 2002, but his contract kept him sidelined. When his deal finally expired in mid-2002, Bam Bam returned to the ring, this time on the independent circuit. While it was a change of pace, he was still a major draw. He wrestled for smaller promotions in the Northeast, where he was already a fan favorite, and even competed internationally, heading to Germany in September 2002. That same year, he won multiple heavyweight championships in USA Pro Wrestling, proving he still had what it took to be a top star. By 2004, though, Bam Bam began slowing down. Years of punishing bumps, chair shots, and hardcore matches had worn on his body. He announced that he would no longer perform dangerous stunts, instead focusing on safer matches to avoid further injuries. Despite those limitations, fans still loved watching him whenever he stepped into the ring. His final match took place on November 7, 2006, just a few months before his passing. Teaming up with Ralph Mosca in American Combat Wrestling, he won the ACW Tag Team Championship, an emotional and fitting way to close out an incredible career. But Bam Bam wasn't just remembered for his wrestling skills, he was a phenomenon. At nearly 400 pounds, he could execute moves you'd expect from a cruiserweight: cartwheels, drop kicks, and even moonsaults. His agility stunned fans and fellow wrestlers alike. Wrestling journalist Dave Meltzer once described Bam Bam as a phenomenon when he first came onto the scene, and that's exactly what he was. Then, of course, there was his unforgettable look. The flame tattoo on his head, his goatee, the missing front tooth, it all added to his tough, edgy persona. His ring gear, covered in flames, perfectly complemented his image. He looked like someone you wouldn't want to mess with, and his in-ring style reflected that. Bam Bam's finishing moves were just as legendary. Early in his career, he used the nuclear splash, a diving splash that left fans in awe. Later, he introduced moves like the slingshot splash and his iconic Greetings from Asbury Park, a reverse piledriver named after the Bruce Springsteen album. And when he pulled off a moonsault or a diving headbutt, it was jaw-dropping to see a man of his size move with such grace. Beyond his look and skill set, Bam Bam carried a raw, punk-inspired energy that made him stand out even more. He had a no-nonsense attitude, but fans connected with him because of his sheer talent and work ethic. Every time he stepped into the ring, he gave it everything he had. Even as his career wound down, Bam Bam remained true to himself. He may not have been wrestling on the biggest stages anymore, but he was still making an impact, especially for fans who grew up watching him. His final match might have taken place in a smaller promotion, but it was proof that even at the end of his career, he still had what it took to win. Looking back, Bam Bam Bigelow wasn't just another wrestler, he was a trailblazer. He redefined what big men in wrestling could do, inspiring countless wrestlers who came after him. He proved that size didn't have to limit what was possible in the ring. If you've never seen Bam Bam in action, do yourself a favor and watch his matches. Whether he was flying off the top rope, battling giants, or simply dominating in the ring, he always left everything out there. He was one of a kind, and his legacy will forever be a part of wrestling history.